There's a cemetery outside of Ashford, Virginia, where 14 gravestones bear the same surname, Waverly, all daughters, all died young, and carved beneath each name is the same phrase, "She never saw the world, but the world saw her." Local historians say it's poetic. The families who left town in the 50s say it's a warning, because every girl born into the Waverly family came into this world without sight. No medical explanation, no genetic disorder modern science could name, just darkness, passed down like a curse through blood. But in 1973, something changed. A daughter was born who could see, and what she saw in that house, in those woods, in the faces of her own ancestors, was never supposed to reach human eyes. This isn't folklore, this is documented, this is real, and once you hear it, you won't forget it. Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. The Waverly family tree begins in 1841, when a man named Silas Waverly purchased 60 acres of land along the Virginia-North Carolina border. The property was dense, isolated, bordered by a river that locals refused to fish from. They said the water ran too still, that it didn't move the way water should. Silas built a home there anyway, married a woman named Constance, and by 1844 they had their first child, a daughter. Her name was Iris, and from the moment she opened her eyes, they knew. She was blind, completely, both eyes pale and clouded, like marbles dipped in milk. The midwife who delivered her said it looked like the child had been born facing the wrong direction, looking inward instead of out. Doctors were called, treatments attempted, but nothing worked. Iris would never see, and as the years passed, Silas and Constance had more children, 3 more daughters, all of them blind from birth, not one son, not one sighted daughter, just 4 girls, walking carefully through a world they would never witness. And when those daughters grew up and had children of their own, the pattern repeated, every single girl, blind. By 1902, the Waverly family had become something of a local legend, not in the way families hope to be remembered, but in the way people speak about things that make them uncomfortable. Women in town would cross themselves when a Waverly daughter walked by, guided by her mother's hand or the edge of a wooden cane. Children were told not to stare, not to ask questions, and certainly not to play near the Waverly house, which sat back in those same dark woods Silas had claimed 60 years earlier. The family itself rarely spoke about the blindness. They adapted. The house was memorized by touch. Furniture never moved. Routines were strict, predictable. The daughters learned to navigate the world through sound, through texture, through a kind of spatial memory that seemed almost supernatural to outsiders. Some said the girls could hear a person's heartbeat from across a room, that they knew when someone was lying just by the shift in their breathing. The town doctor, a man named Edward Hollis, kept meticulous records. He examined every Waverly daughter born between 1890 and 1923, 12 girls in total. And his notes, which were donated to the County Historical Society in 1968, all say the same thing: no physiological cause. The eyes themselves were formed correctly, the optic nerves were intact, but there was no sight, no light perception, nothing. Hollis wrote in his final report, dated 1924, that he believed the condition was psychological in nature, not physical, that the Waverly daughters were born blind because some part of their mind refused to see. He called it hereditary hysterical blindness. He also noted, in the margins of that same report, that every time he examined one of the girls, he felt watched. Not by the child, by something else in the room. In 1937, a woman named Margaret Waverly gave birth to twin daughters in that same house. Their names were Eileen and Abigail, both born blind, as expected. But something else happened that night. Something the midwife, a woman named Ruth Calhoun, would later describe in a written statement she gave to the local pastor. Ruth said that during the delivery she heard singing, not from Margaret, who was silent through most of the labor, not from anyone in the room. It came from somewhere deeper in the house. A woman's voice, high and clear, singing a lullaby Ruth had never heard before. She asked Margaret's husband, Thomas, if someone else was home. He said no. The house was empty, except for them. But Ruth heard it again, closer this time, just outside the bedroom door, and when she opened it, the hallway was dark and still, no one there. She finished the delivery, cleaned the babies, and left before sunrise. She never returned to that house. Years later, in 1959, Ruth gave an interview to a graduate student studying Appalachian folklore. In it, she said the song she heard that night was the same song she heard hummed by Eileen and Abigail when they were older. A melody they couldn't have known, a melody no one had taught them. Ruth also said that both girls, despite being blind, would turn their heads in perfect unison toward empty corners of a room, as if watching something move, as if following something no one else could see. The student asked Ruth if she thought the girls were pretending. Ruth said no. She said the girls weren't looking at nothing. They were looking at something. They just weren't using their eyes to do it. The Waverly family began to shrink after the Second World War. Sons-in-law refused to stay on the property. Daughters married and moved away, though they still gave birth to blind girls no matter how far they ran. Some families tried to sever the connection entirely, changing their names, cutting contact. It didn't matter. The blindness followed. By 1968, only one branch of the family remained in the original house. A woman named Caroline Waverly, her husband Joseph, and their 3 daughters, Laurel, Iris, and Constance. All 3 girls were blind, all 3 were homeschooled, and all 3, according to neighbors, spent hours every day sitting in the same room on the 2nd floor, facing the same wall, not speaking, not moving, just sitting. When asked why, Caroline would only say they were praying, but the neighbors said it didn't look like prayer, it looked like listening. In 1970, Joseph Waverly disappeared. He told his wife he was going into town for supplies. His truck was found 3 days later, parked at the edge of the woods near the house. Keys still in the ignition, groceries rotting in the back seat, the driver's side door wide open. Search parties combed the property. Dogs were brought in. They tracked Joseph's scent to the tree line and then stopped, refused to go further. One handler said his dog sat down, stared into the woods, and started whining like it had been hit. Joseph was never found. Caroline told the police he must have wandered off, that maybe he'd had a stroke or a mental break. But her daughters, all 3 of them, told a deputy something different. They said their father saw something he shouldn't have, that he went looking for it in the woods, and that it found him first. Caroline Waverly died in 1972. Heart failure, according to the county coroner. She was 41 years old. Her 3 daughters were placed temporarily with a distant relative in Richmond while the estate was settled, but Caroline had been 8 months pregnant when she died. The baby was delivered post-mortem by emergency cesarean section at Ashford General Hospital. A girl, alive, screaming, and when the nurses cleaned her face and looked into her eyes, they saw something none of them expected. The child could see. Her eyes were clear, focused, tracking movement and light. The attending physician, Dr. Raymond Moss, noted it in his report with visible confusion. He wrote, "Patient exhibits full visual response, no cloudiness, no indication of familial condition. First sighted female in documented Waverly lineage. The baby was named Claire, and because there was no immediate family capable of taking her, she was placed into foster care. The state of Virginia tried to locate her sisters, but by then, Laurel, Iris, and Constance had vanished. The relative they'd been staying with said they left in the middle of the night, took nothing, said nothing, just walked out the front door and disappeared. Some believed they went back to the house. Others thought they'd gone into the woods, following the same path their father took. Police searched again, found nothing. Claire Waverly grew up in 3 different foster homes, unaware of her family's history. She was a bright child, quiet, but her caseworkers noted something unusual. Claire refused to sleep in the dark. She needed every light in the room on. And when asked why, she would only say that if she closed her eyes, she could feel someone standing next to her bed. Someone waiting for her to stop looking. If you're still watching, you're already braver than most. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if this was your bloodline? Claire turned 18 in 1991. By then, she'd aged out of the foster system and was living in a small apartment in Roanoke, working at a grocery store and attending community college. She had no contact with anyone from her biological family, didn't even know their names. But that changed when a lawyer named Thomas Grief contacted her in May of that year. He told her she was the sole surviving heir to the Waverly estate, that the property, the house, and everything in it now belonged to her. Claire had no memory of the place. She'd been an infant when she left, but Grief encouraged her to visit. He said there were documents inside, family records, things she deserved to see. So, in June of 1991, Claire Waverly drove out to Ashford for the first time in her life. The house was still standing. Barely. The roof sagged. The windows were boarded. The porch had rotted through in places. But the door was unlocked, and inside, everything was exactly as it had been left 19 years earlier. Furniture covered in dust, plates still on the kitchen table, a cradle in the corner of the master bedroom. Claire spent the first hour just walking through the rooms, trying to feel some connection to the people who had lived there. She found photographs, women with pale, empty eyes staring toward the camera, but never quite at it. She found medical records, page after page, documenting the blindness. And then, in a drawer in the second-floor hallway, she found a journal. It belonged to her mother, Caroline. The entries were sporadic, some written years apart, but they all said the same thing. The blindness wasn't a curse, it was a mercy. Caroline wrote that the Waverly women were born blind because sight was dangerous in that house, that there were things living in the walls, in the woods, in the spaces between rooms that should never be perceived. She wrote that the blindness was protection, a shield passed down through generations, and that if a daughter was ever born who could see, she would be the one to break the line, or be broken by it. Claire left the house that evening. She told herself the journal was the writing of a disturbed woman, grief, isolation, superstition, but she couldn't stop thinking about it. And 3 days later, she went back. This time, she brought a camera. She wanted to document the house, to prove to herself it was just a decaying structure full of old fears and nothing more. She photographed every room, the kitchen, the bedrooms, the narrow staircase leading to the second floor, and then she went into the room her mother had described in the journal, the room where her sisters used to sit, facing the wall. The room was empty, but the wall wasn't. Someone had carved words into the plaster, deep, jagged letters that looked like they'd been scratched with fingernails, over and over, covering the entire surface. The same sentence repeated hundreds of times. "We kept our eyes closed, so you could keep yours open." Claire took a photograph, and when she looked through the viewfinder, she saw them. 3 women, standing in the corner of the room, facing her. Their eyes were open, but there was nothing inside them, just black, endless, hungry. Claire ran. She made it to her car. She drove back to Roanoke and never returned. But the photograph developed, and in it, clear as anything, were 3 figures, tall, thin, faces too long, eyes too wide, standing exactly where Claire had seen them. She brought the photo to a priest, to a paranormal investigator, to anyone who might explain it, but no one could. And then, in November of 1991, Claire Waverly disappeared. Her apartment was found unlocked, her car still parked outside, but she was gone. On her kitchen table, investigators found a handwritten note. It said, "I understand now. They weren't born blind. They chose it. And I can't unsee what they protected me from. I'm going back. I have to close my eyes too." The Waverly house burned down in 1992. No cause was ever determined. The land was sold. The gravestones were relocated, and the family name faded into local legend. But there are still people in Ashford who remember, who refuse to go near the woods where that house once stood, because they say if you walk too deep, if you stay too long after dark, you'll hear it. Singing. A woman's voice. High and clear. A lullaby no one alive should know, and if you follow it, you'll see them. Standing between the trees, watching, waiting, their eyes wide open, seeing everything. And if you're the kind of person who can see them back, they'll know. and they'll follow you home.